Hello, welcome to the Escape Podcast, your source for all good things in the universe of movies. I'm Josh.
I'm Brandon.
All right.
So then what?
How's everybody doing? Thanks for coming back. I don't know.
All right, today we're talking about The Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal? Mm-hmm.
From 1980.
7.
No.
4.
Yes.
2.
Was it 1984?
No, it's...
82.
82.
Okay.
I just messed around.
Okay, today we're talking about The Dark Crystal from 1982. But before we get to that, we have just a couple things, really.
Yeah, go ahead. Lead us off.
Well, we just watched the Venom trailer.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that in the last episode we did for The Sandlot, where we also talked about the Comic-Con footage. We skipped that. We skipped Fantastic Beasts because somebody didn't care.
Darn that, Brittany. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, yeah, the Venom trailer. When I first heard they were doing Venom and they were going to have it on the West Coast and have it kind of away from Spider-Man, I was kind of bummed out.
Okay.
I don't know. After seeing the trailers, I'm kind of intrigued by it.
So, it's like there's some things I can nitpick about and some things I can also appreciate. And I'm not blaming him as an actor, but I'm not really a fan of the voice, the accent that they're having Tom Hardy do.
The kind of like nervous sounding that he's doing.
Well, not just that, but just that's like his, I guess, demeanor or whatever. I'm saying, like the actual accent that he's doing. I don't know what the accent is. Like, it almost sounds like. I mean, I guess I don't know my accents, but it sounds almost like a New York type accent. I wonder if they're going to say that he was from New York, moved out there, and maybe they can later pair him later so he can like go home. I don't know.
That'd be smart.
I heard that he also did the voice of Venom, which some points I did like that voice, and then when he was doing that long spiel about I'm going to eat your arms and your legs, and it sounded less threatening. Like it almost sounded more threatening when he was just doing his thing. Like I don't know. It was like it was supposed to be funny, but it didn't make me laugh. And what did he say? You're going to be this armless, legless thing, like a turd in the wind? Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all we are, turds in the wind.
I think, they show the part where he's like being ripped apart by the other symbiote, and it made me think of what you said, where all these movies have to have one version of a thing versus the
same version.
Exactly, the other side of the coin. And I realized that that's going on, and I also thought like the part where he's actually fighting and like he was like, it was like being pulled away, you could see Eddie's face. It kind of reminded me of Spider-Man 3, which also had Venom when the clock bell in the church was ringing, and it was like making him, like it was pulling away from Eddie Brock for a few moments, and you would see his face. And I think he did the same thing where he was like taking those pipes and like hitting them and stuff. It kind of reminded me of that, and I'm kind of surprised that they would do anything that was reminiscent of it. At least that's how I felt about it.
Well, in the comics, that would happen all the time. Like the symbiote would come back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I'm saying like it looked like it was like in pain.
There are two weaknesses that I remember. One were like sonic waves, so loud noises and stuff would harm it and cause it to peel away from him.
Yeah.
And the other one was heat, I believe.
Okay. Beyond that, like I didn't like the part where the Venom head literally pulled away. And it was like this puppet hanging out from him.
I actually kind of like that because that's still kind of out of the comics.
Okay, very well. I thought it was cool. There was different versions of it. Like there was like, did you see there was like a yellowish one and there was like a grayish one? Obviously, I thought that was kind of cool. That was just like different ones.
Yeah, different. They're different aliens basically.
Yeah,
they each have their own personalities. And
well, I'm almost wondering, and it's not to sound like weird, but like I almost wonder if they're like different races of the same species because they seem to operate the same way. They're all like this ooze slime type thing.
I think they're part of the same race. They're just different entities.
Yeah. They have this parasitic relationship with their host.
Symbiotic.
Shut up, jerk. What else?
They're like what's Dax?
A symbiote.
What's the name of that race again?
Oh, isn't Dax the name of the race?
Well, that's the name of the thing in her.
I thought they were all like, because she was Curzon Dax or whatever.
I think Dax was the name of the symbiote.
Oh.
Or the symbiote.
Oh, I don't know. What are they called?
What are they called? It was on the tip of my tongue.
I don't care.
All right.
I thought it was cool. They're doing like, it almost seems in some ways more like a sci-fi horror.
Yeah, they're making it very dark. I don't remember him eating people.
And before. I like that they're doing a sci-fi horror because that does seem a little refreshing. But at the same time, I'm not digging the comedy. At least from what I saw of the comedy, it's not working for me. I almost feel like
part
that's
at the end
expected.
Was pretty bad. I'm like, oh, sorry, I got a parasite. Like, okay.
Yeah, like that. I don't know. So I'm kind of, mixed about it because I'm almost viewing this as unrelated to comic books. I'm kind of separating myself from it in that way because and I know it is, but how I've talked about the comic book movies just kind of burnt out. But this seems refreshing in a lot of ways because it almost looks so different.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much Marvel actually has to do with this. Mm-hmm. They're saying nothing, but I don't know.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe.
But they're going to make it. It's going to be rated R. You're going to see people getting their heads bitten off, stuff like that. I don't know.
I feel like they're going to do a lot of rated R movies since Deadpool, Logan, and all that did well with
I'm intrigued by it, and the thing that you said, you always got to fight another version of himself, that's a little bit annoying. Where it wouldn't be annoying, though, is the one that's not going to be in this movie that they'll probably save for later on is Carnage. Yeah. Carnage is one bad dude.
Well, and then there was this part where he's yelling and his face. It looks like it was. It looks like this old effect from some older movie. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it looked like they were flashing lights at his face. Do you remember that part I'm talking about? It just looked very old fashioned to me, and I wish I could recall exactly what movie I've seen something like that it's reminding me of, but it just...
Fire in the Sky?
Maybe. Eddie Brock, I always thought he was a bad guy. It seems like
he's in between.
Is he? Okay. See, I always thought he was just perfect relationship. He was bad either way, where this is almost it's taken over him. It seems like he can do stuff without his will. So what is it? Is it feed off him somehow? What is it? Why does it need a person? Exactly.
I don't know exactly, but the best way to think of it is like Dax.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to say about it?
The other thing I wanted to bring up was what's the next chapter in your Timeless saga?
Well, they had a couple of the actors had announced that there's going to be some big news coming because basically when it got canceled the second time, they were saying that, all the fans that were rallying trying to get it to come back, they were saying, the writers were saying, well, possibly we might be able to get a 2-hour made-for-TV movie to end it all, but we're going to shoot for a third season, but that might be the more likely way. So the actors finally started saying there's going to be a big announcement soon, and finally they announced they are in fact going to do a 2-hour made-for-TV movie, which I'm happy that they're doing something as opposed to nothing, but I really would have rather had a season 3. To me, there's too many things that I'm worried they're not going to be able to they're just going to have to try to cram it all in there, and I don't feel it's going to do it justice, and it's just going to seem rushed and sloppy. I hope that's not the case, but that's where we're at. It should be, I guess, coming out around Thanksgiving, I think they said, or sometime in November of this year. And they said they tried to get, Netflix and various others to try to see if they want to pick it up, and apparently nobody bid on that.
Well, thanks for giving us something, right?
Yeah, I guess. I know there's the big one that they're going to obviously answer, but there's so much little stuff that I've been wondering from the word go. How are they going to explain this? For instance, well, I don't care, I'll just tell you. One of the things from the first episode, I think they said, is you cannot go back into a time you already exist. So, you can't go back to your own lifetime, or let's just say, for the sake of argument, in the first...
So, for example, I'm 102. I can't go back any closer than 103 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you could even go up to, I think, a couple days before you were born.
Okay.
But, that was also a way which kind of made it cool, because they do fail missions. It isn't every, they always get them at the end. Mm-hmm. So, basically, because in the first episode, they were even talking about, why can't we just go back and try over again, and they were saying, you can't. We already, now that we exist in that time, we can't go back to it. So, it's just there. It's done.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I liked that. Because, even though, I love in Back to the Future how there is a lot of that duplicate versions, I think that's kind of a smart and interesting direction to go for this. Mm-hmm. And that's what I...
And so there's consequences to it, right?
Yeah, so basically they said, like, when they started doing the early test, before the team that's put together in the first episode start, they had done some tests with time travel, and that's how they found out, is that by having someone go back into a time they already existed, but they never told you what happened to that person yet. And that's one thing I've been dying to know, is, like, what happened to that person? What kind of consequences? What did it do? So that's something.
Okay.
But yeah, so anyway, that's it. Timeless, made-for-TV movie, sometime in November.
And it'll be airing on the original network?
Yeah, it's staying with NBC. They're going to finish it off there.
Okay.
Yep.
So we watched The Dark Crystal recently.
Yes.
Had you ever seen it before?
I had seen about half of it a long time ago.
Like, how old were you?
Mid-20s. Something like that. Maybe 24, 25, something like that.
Pretty late?
Pardon me?
That's pretty late.
Okay, what else? Mid-late 20s?
You didn't see it, like, when you were a kid?
No.
Why did you see it in your 20s? Like, who wanted you to watch it?
I just decided to watch it. I had heard about it before, just never... Somehow I never seen it. I saw The Labyrinth when I was a kid.
Okay.
But never saw this one as a kid, so...
Why did you only watch half?
I can't remember. I was watching... I found it on YouTube years ago. I think it was like, it was like 20 parts or something to get through.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And, then there's always like a part that's missing and, crap like that. I just think I ended up getting sidetracked and never got back to it.
Okay, well, The Dark Crystal was released in 1982, directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz.
Mm-hmm.
The synopsis is... 1,000 years ago, on the planet Thra, a magical crystal is cracked, which allows two new races to appear. The malevolent Skeksis, who use the power of the Dark Crystal to continually replenish themselves, and the kind wizards called Mystics. Jen, an elf-like gelfling, is taken in by the Mystics after his clan was killed, and is told by his mystic master that he must heal the crystal or the Skeksis will rule forever.
Okay.
Trivia?
Yes.
The budget was $25 million.
Okay.
The film currently holds a 74% critic rating and 81% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The box office, it brought in $41.3 million. Henson's inspiration for the visual aspects of the film came from around 1975 or 76, after he saw an illustration by Leonard B. Lubin, I hope I'm saying that right, in a 1975 edition of Lewis Carroll's poetry showing crocodiles living in a palace and wearing elaborate robes and jewelry. The film's conceptual roots lay in Henson's short-lived The Land of Gorch, which also took place in an alien world with no human characters. According to co-director Frank Oz, Henson's intention was to get back to the darkness of the original Grimm's fairy tales, as he believed that it was unhealthy for children to never be afraid.
Did you ever see The Storyteller?
No, what is it?
It's a Jim Henson television show.
Oh, I may have.
It's kind of like The Twilight Zone in that no one episode is, just all a different story each time. But it's, a lot of the puppets and animatronics and stuff.
Okay. And it was a little bit on the darker side?
A little bit, yeah.
When I watched this, I watched it all the time when I was a kid. My mom and dad bought it for me on VHS. Mm-hmm. I was probably 3 or 4 when I first started watching it. I watched it a lot. And then my dad accidentally recorded over it.
Recorded, like a store-bought tape?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, he recorded something on TV using that tape.
Yeah, that's what he did. He used a blank tape. He used the actual
so it was years and years. I was probably close to 20 before I saw it again. And then I've watched it a couple times since then.
Okay.
At the time it was made, it was hailed as the only live-action film in which a human character makes no appearance. With the exception of some wide shots of the Gelflings, it would have been the first ever live-action film where no human actors were used. Or appeared.
In the wide shots, they used actual humans?
Yeah, there are parts where when, during the wide shots, you can tell, like, they're moving around a lot more naturally.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a scene towards the beginning where you see them running across a bridge. Mm-hmm. It looks like a person. Well, it is. Mm-hmm. And it's really kind of... It's neat to see the way that they blended, the puppets with the actual people.
What was the other... You said it was, at the time, it was, like, the only movie or one of the only movies that had...
It was the only one.
So what's one of them now?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
If you know, write to us at thescapepodcast16@gmail.com.
Nobody's listening.
Okay. Anyway. Although there were 9 of them, the Skeksis were originally based on the 7 deadly sins. Early drafts of the script featured Jen and Kira traveling through the underworld, where they encountered a race of underground mining creatures. Does that sound familiar?
No.
The concept was later integrated...
Oh, the time machine?
The concept was later integrated into Fraggle Rock.
Oh, see, I never watched Fraggle. Well, I watched it, but I have such little memories of it, like...
Wash your cares away.
Yeah. I'm not quite up on it.
Day. No?
I remember, like, the intro where it's running through,
yeah,
like, the tunnels and stuff, but I don't remember really watching it enough to know anything about it.
Okay. I'm going to bring up Fraggle Rock later again,
okay.
But I watched it. Okay. In February 1978, Jim Henson and his daughter Cheryl Henson found themselves stuck in an airport hotel when Kennedy Airport was struck by a snowstorm. They worked out the details of the film's world on numerous sheets of hotel notepaper. The notes became inspiration for the screenplay. Work on the film didn't begin until 1979, after the completion of The Muppet Movie, which was shot in Los Angeles. The film was shot in England, back-to-back with The Great Muppet Caper from 1981. The Gartham costumes were so heavy that the performers had to be hung up on a rack every 5 minutes to rest while still in the costume.
Which one's the Gartham?
The big crab things. I read somewhere that they were like 200 pounds or something like that.
I don't remember them calling them that. What did they actually say?
Yeah. In France and Japan, this was the highest grossing box office release of 1983. It was released in the U.S. at the end of 1982. That's when E.T. came out, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
but
which crushed everything.
I can't be sure, but I thought so.
The invented language of the podlings in the film and the character of Kira, when she is speaking to animals, actually contains a number of Croatian, Serbian, and Bosnian words. They are poorly pronounced but easily intelligible. They are not randomly placed, but are used properly in their situations. The electronic group The Crystal Method uses samples from the Dark Crystal in their song Trip Like I Do.
Okay.
And that is the end of trivia. This is a Jim Henson movie.
Yes.
Jim Henson was great. I'm sure we've both watched plenty of his stuff.
See, Jim Henson, obviously the Labyrinth comes to mind. Muppets, specifically for me, the Muppet Christmas Carol was the one I'm most familiar with.
Muppets, Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock.
Oh yeah, Sesame Street. How can I forget that? Yeah.
He was born in 1936, but died suddenly of toxic shock syndrome in 1990 at the age of 53.
Wait, what? Toxic shock syndrome? What is that? I've never heard of that.
I don't know.
Okay.
Sounds like maybe a blood thing.
Yikes.
I had read before, too, that he is like, his parents were, what is it, like Christian scientists? Or was that what it's called?
Where there's a Christian scientist. I don't know exactly
what
they
don't really believe in medicine.
Oh, really? Is that what...
So,
okay.
They say that wasn't what got him, but it sounds like maybe it partially contributed. He began developing puppets while attending high school. He founded the Muppets. He founded Muppets Incorporated in 1958, which became the Jim Henson Company.
All right. Obviously, a lot of their stuff was used in Star Wars.
It's been a long time since I've seen any Muppet movies.
Okay.
I do remember those first few were really good, or at least I liked them a lot.
What is the first one? I know it has...
The Muppet Movie,
yeah.
The Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan.
I think that's one of the earliest films to have a stinger.
Is it? Oh, we read that, didn't we?
I feel like, I don't know, somehow...
We did that in one of our previous episodes. Yeah. Which one was it? Muppet Movie?
I feel like it probably was.
Or Muppet Caper. It was one of the Muppet movies.
Yeah.
And it had a little stinger at the end. Stinger, for anybody that doesn't know, is the part that comes after the credits.
Like a secret scene.
Yeah, that could happen also maybe in a podcast, who knows.
I wouldn't know anything about
he co-directed this with Frank Oz. Frank Oz was born in 1944. He is currently 74.
Okay.
He has provided the voice of Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Animal, Sam the Eagle, Cookie Monster, Bert, Grover, and Yoda. His other works as director also include Little Shop of Horrors from 1986, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, What About Bob?
Yep.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know that he directed that.
Yeah, I did know that one.
In and Out, Bowfinger, The Score, Death at a Funeral, and the U.S. television series Leverage.
Really?
Mm-hmm. He also appeared in American Werewolf in London, which we've talked about.
Who was he again?
He was the American ambassador, I believe,
okay.
or he worked for the U.S. Embassy.
Okay.
He came to visit David while he was in the hospital.
Okay.
And you could tell by his voice.
Right.
It sounded very familiar. So they also did, you mentioned it earlier, Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Which was a lot lighter than this.
Yes.
Did you like Labyrinth?
As a kid, yes. Looking back on it, I'm not a fan of musicals, so I know people would probably hang me if they could get their hands on me. If I could have
Bill Murray would.
If I could get my way, I would cut all the musical numbers out. To me, it's kind of, it's not my thing. It just kind of slows it down. And I feel like they were really trying to showcase Bowie, that they had Bowie in the movie, having him sing like these long songs, like especially like the ballroom song. Do you remember that?
In a lot of movies, I'm not really a big fan of like musical numbers and stuff, but I mean, not all the time. Sometimes I really enjoy them.
Yeah.
Labyrinth was a little different. Yeah, it was more for like young teenagers, maybe like young adolescents, and I think it was actually geared more towards girls. I've heard a lot of people make allusions to it being about a girl becoming a woman.
It was a magical time.
Yeah, but this is different. This takes place on a different planet.
Right.
There's nothing really recognizable in it as far as being from Earth. I mean, the Skeksis kind of look bird-like.
Right.
Kind of like a cross between a lizard and a vulture.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about this movie, and it's funny because I would think back to this movie while I was watching Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched Avatar, I thought, I've seen fantasy worlds that are more creative than this, and I immediately thought of The Dark Crystal, because everything in it just seems so unique.
Yes, it was insane, like how everything was alive. I was at one point just trying to keep track of all the different types of creatures I saw, because everything was just so weird and unearthly looking about it, and it was very creative. I would love to like find a book just where like you actually get like some stuff. I was like found myself rewinding to see like what the crap was that, you know.
So we've kind of lamented the fact that we hadn't done a lot of fantasy. I consider Star Wars more of a fantasy. You don't.
It's funny, we were just talking today where you said you think it's a fantasy movie with a sci-fi twist, and I was saying I feel it's more of a sci-fi movie with a fantasy twist. But well, yeah, I know it is a...
We've done... superhero movies are kind of considered fantasy.
Which is also funny because typically I associate them with sci-fi. Because typically, you know, it's...
Or action.
It's experiment, some kind of scientific experiment to give someone powers or create something.
Or they're an alien.
Yeah, so it feels more like...
Or they're an insane rich guy.
Yeah. But let's see, we did the Neverending Story.
Conan.
Yes, Conan.
So this would be like our third pure fantasy movie.
Yeah, I guess. Kind of splitting hairs on the other ones.
How do you feel about fantasy?
You know, I like I like stuff like this. You know, like Lord of the Rings that's cool. I don't have a problem with it, but I kind of think this is what I think is cooler about this is like you said, even Lord of the Rings, there's it's not just the fact that there are humans in it, but like everything has a very I recognize things. You know, there's a horse and a buggy, and there's swords and just things that I can still relate to, or whatever, or from our past kind of. Whereas this is so otherworldly, it's really kind of makes it more interesting to me.
I feel like this one's a little more unique, not just because it's puppets.
Well, what's funny is as I was watching it, I did get a Lord of the Rings vibe with the actual story. You got the crystal you're returning, basically is like the ring. You have a lone Skeksis. Skeksis? Like sexy?
With a K. Skeksy.
Skeksy. He's kind of like Gollum, I feel like. In a way.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, there's plot elements or certain things that kind of go along with Lord of the Rings. I'm not saying they ripped it off, but
no. But I got that vibe too a little bit when I was watching it. I was being reminded of Lord of the Rings while I was watching it more recently. You have the small, unassuming hero going on this great quest.
Yeah, exactly. They would be the hobbits, yeah.
Delivering an artifact to the most dangerous place he could go, where the enemy is already at.
Yeah.
The Skeksis are, like, overlording everything, and everything around them is just, like, dead and dark.
But one thing, like, I didn't feel, for them being the big bad, I didn't feel like they were all that threatening looking. Like, you could definitely tell they were, like, supposed to be evil and menacing, but, like, they weren't scary. Like, they weren't intimidating in that way.
If you're a smaller kid, they're scary.
For a kid, sure.
I remember when I watched this when I was a kid, and like I said, I was like 3 or 4 when I first started watching it. There were a couple scenes that really creeped me out. One was at the beginning when the oldest Skeksis dies, the one that was in charge.
Yeah.
And he just kind of crumbles away into nothing. And that was a really cool effect, too. I'm not exactly sure how they did that. The other one that really bothered me when I was a kid that kind of creeped me out or made me feel weird was when they got one of those little guys. I can't remember what they're called.
There's so many little things running around.
The ones that they kept as slaves.
Oh, yes. They were the most Muppety looking things, yeah. His eyes.
Yeah, when they were draining his essence.
Yes, it was kind of funny looking, but also kind of creepy looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Skeksis look more like they would be like the sidekick or the henchman of the big bad. Like, I was expecting...
You know who they kind of reminded me of?
No.
Klingons.
Oh?
Yeah, like, the one just held on to power right up until he died, and then they're fighting over who's going to be in charge.
I guess, I never thought of that. Didn't they do a part where when the Skeksis, the main one, he's in, like, his bed, they're all, like, gathered around waiting for him to die, and he disappears, and, like, doesn't his blanket do the fall thing?
Maybe his clothes, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, everything that he was wearing, the blanket that was over him just falls. It was funny, because, like, the next year they did that with Yoda. I just thought it was funny, like...
Well, they would have done that with Obi-Wan, too, in the first one.
I guess, but it was almost like Vader just slices through him, and it was almost like they just cut a string that was holding, like, a wire, like it just fell down, where this looked like he actually, you see him, he fades, and then you see the blanket just kind of fall. Mm-hmm. It more reminded me of that, which this came out in 82, Return of the Jedi, where Yoda dies, came out in 83, obviously. The original Star Wars came out in 77, so yeah, it seems like that was probably a more sophisticated technique effect that they could do in the late 70s. Or, I don't know. That's just the impression I got.
One of the things I noticed right away, or that I was kind of looking at, was the different tones between the Skeksis and the Mystics.
Okay.
The Skeksis, everything was dark and jagged. Everything came to a point. Mm-hmm. And when they showed the Mystics, it seemed like everything was not necessarily light, but it was more like earth tony. Mm-hmm. Like light browns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And everything was more like it's swirled. Rounded. Okay. Yeah.
What's their actual species? Because remember, they're actually... Mystics is kind of like their profession or their craft. But what's their actual... They have a name for them.
Mystics. They were called the Mystics.
But I thought when I looked it up, it said it gave them an actual, like, if you will, a species.
Maybe that was the combined... Because what it is they're... The Skeksis and the Mystics were two aspects of one race that ended up splitting when the crystal got damaged.
Right, but you don't know that at...
Right.
Yeah, where was it? Somewhere I saw... what else? Carry on.
So I thought that contrast was interesting.
Okay. There was several scenes I actually paused it because I thought it was so amazing. Like, there was a shot, I think, where he's climbing up a mountain, and you look back and you see, like, the land way down there, like he's crazy high, and you see like rivers and stuff. I thought they did a really good job with that. There were certain caves where just I know it's not quite I guess it would be still set, but like the backgrounds and the landscapes were really astounding to me, how well they did that and how well they held up.
Yeah, like everything, the set design in this movie was incredible.
Yeah, and you're thinking like everything pretty much is in camera. There was probably a few opticals they added for certain things, later, but basically, as far as I could tell, everything was in camera, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe that's, like...
A lot of it.
Bat creature that was, like, spying on them, that was when it was flying, obviously, that was probably an optical effect. Other than that...
That's another thing that reminded me of Lord of the Rings.
Yes, is it the ravens that spy on them?
It was something like that.
can see the influence, his style, like, that came in Star Wars, especially like when you get to Jabba's palace. I'm not saying it's like a ripoff, but you know, just the way everything's alive in the room, and it just everything has a very unique look to it. Nothing really looks. That's the one thing, you know, I always, not to get off on a Star Wars thing, but like just kind of a praise for Henson is, you know, some things will kind of look like maybe a certain animal to a degree. Like you said, the Skeksis kind of look basically like buzzards or whatever, vultures. You know, everything basically has a very unearthly look to it, and I always appreciate that about Star Wars, which really I should more give credit
just
to
all the
Henson.
creativity. Yeah, it's so creative, the way they came up with the creatures and the creature designs. And like when I was talking about Avatar earlier, and I was kind of comparing the two, when I watched Avatar, it was cool, and I remember people going on about like how the world was so fantastic and amazing.
Yeah,
it was, but it was basically a big rainforest.
Right.
And all the animals in the movie were basically animals that already exist on Earth.
Like a wolf with extra legs or a horse with extra legs. Yeah, no, I could feel you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was thinking, man, I thought the Neverending Story looked pretty good for its age and for what they were able to do, and I'm not knocking it. But, like, you know, like the giant turtle, that looked pretty good and stuff. But, like, you know, when you see the wolf, Gamork or whatever his name is, at the end, like, he doesn't have really good movement. With, you know, it's a big, I guess that would be a puppet, right? Or animatronic.
Just like the front part of
where he's in the cave. Like, it's, you know, his mouth doesn't move totally all that great. And there were some other things in that movie, Falkor. He looks cool, but like when you compare those things with this, there's no comparison. I mean, like, this movie looks so great. The way things move.
It actually kind of surprises me that the budget was only $25 million.
Yeah.
I mean, most of it had to go into just all the designs they did for the puppets and the robots and the set design and painting everything. Just all the creation they did. They didn't really have actors in the movie. They had a couple voice actors.
Right.
And then they had basically Henson and Frank Oz did a lot of the work themselves between the puppeteering and doing voices.
Right.
So I guess they would have saved money there, but it's just amazing because the level of detail is so great in this movie. Like you said, everything, there's little creatures that don't mean anything to the story, but you'll see them moving around in the background. They go to several different big areas. Even when he visits, what's her name?
Not Aughra. Aughra. I knew it was something like that.
Yeah, when he goes to see Aughra, Aughra's like little whatever it was laboratory.
Yeah,
was pretty insane in the way it had that big swirling like basically their solar system. Yeah, and how many planets are there in the solar system? That's a lot.
Yeah,
there's 3 suns.
Exactly. Yeah, that was cool.
So yeah, just everything was pretty amazing about this movie, except for, I think the one piece that didn't look all that great was the main character.
Just his expression or lack thereof.
He seemed like the weakest model out of all the puppets.
I mean, I definitely feel like his eyes didn't move a lot.
Like his arms looked like they were in, like a couple different pieces. Like you could see where it bent a lot. And
yeah, I didn't quite pick up on that. I did notice that his face didn't express as much as some of the others.
Mm-hmm. I did hear that Jim Henson said this was his favorite project he ever worked on.
Yeah, I saw that.
And there's always been talks about making a sequel.
Right, and I believe they even said there was one scheduled some years ago, but then it got scrapped.
Mm-hmm.
And
they kept getting canceled for whatever reason.
And now Netflix is going to do a prequel TV series.
Netflix is making a prequel series that's supposed to air next year, 2019.
All right. Yeah, I think we actually talked about that in one of our status report videos. We mentioned that.
There's a trailer for it. Have you seen it?
The trailer is almost like a half trailer, half behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like kind of showing them making the puppets and stuff.
Yeah, it shows them doing like some concept art, and then they're making the puppets, and they look like the puppets from the movie.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what Jim Henson would have been able to do, like
with today's technology.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I know you don't like the new Star Wars movies, but like there's certain creatures in that kind of reminded me of this. Like it seemed like there was
like Mark Hamill.
No, so just some of the background creatures that you see in like The Force Awakens kind of reminded me of certain things you see. Just that kind of creativity a little bit more. Just the creatures. I'm just talking the creatures. Calm down.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to get on a big thing. the Skeksis, man, I can't say the word. The Sexies.
The Skeksis.
The Sexies.
Yes.
Their voices and their goofy little sounds.
Mm.
Yeah. that made them even less intimidating to me. And maybe I should get off of that because, this is kind of a kid's movie, I guess, but...
Yeah, well, you're 35, not 3.5.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of like when we talked about how you didn't see the Goonies until you were older, so...
Yeah.
For me, I saw it at the perfect age.
Mm-hmm. Whereas
for me now seeing this, like, I can try to view some things in a kid mind, and some things I just, can't. It would have been nice for me, like, to see it, certain things just a little more weight to it with the, I don't know, feeling like, I don't know, like I said, and they were like, it's funny that they made them, like, look like vultures because they were, like, they weren't even cool with each other. Like, seemed totally about stabbing each other in the back, like just waiting for one to die to like basically take over that spot.
Well, they were greedy and prideful. The sins, remember?
Right, yeah. But anyway,
go ahead, keep going.
I thought it was cool that they had each one have a slightly different appearance. That they didn't just like copy and paste, so to speak. I thought that was really great. That even within the same species, they have their own personalities and stuff.
Yeah, the person I watched this with, we were watching together. I was watching with Christy. Yeah. And,
Christy, who's that?
And that's one of the things we noticed. Like, it was really cool how, like, they were all basically the same creatures, but it wasn't just, like, one mold. They all looked different.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, okay, when you first meet, is it Aughra?
Aughra.
Aughra? I can't say anything right. Mm-hmm. Aughra. I wasn't sure if she was going to end up being a traitor. I thought maybe she might be misleading him. Perhaps. I wasn't sure how that was going to play out.
She was an interesting character. She was the only one of her kind that we saw. She had like an eye that could come out and like still work.
Yeah, she basically had one eye and she could pull it out. It was that reminded me of this is a lame comparison, but I'm going to say it. Mr. Potato Head in the Toy Story. The way he, I know, where he could pull his eye out and look around.
Well, she kind of looked like a potato. Yeah, I thought it was kind of neat how she was almost a scientist in this world. Like, she had all those contraptions, and she was trying to do calculations, trying to figure out when the end was near. But she was also basing everything on prophecy, too. So it's kind of like a neat little mix.
Science and, yeah.
Yeah, and the way, like, her laboratory was set up, it was almost steampunkish in a way.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that, but...
Just like, technology...
Yeah.
That's a little bit advanced for the time.
Right, okay.
Not using the...
See, I didn't know if steampunk could mean anything that's just slightly futuristic for its time, or if it was an actual... Isn't
kind of, like, one of the
look?
big examples people use is, like, Final Fantasy, some of those. Like, you'll get, like, an air balloon or something. But, like, it has a more of a medieval setting, but then you'll see every now and then, like, a scientific object that you can use. Like, a robot or something will pop up. But it's made of, like... Not the high-tech stuff, like gears and
right.
Yeah. Like clockwork stuff.
Okay, I guess I did write down the mystics. It was capital U, little r, capital R, little u. Uru? Okay, so at first, when they showed them, I noticed they had like a left arm, a right arm, and then I saw another right arm. But I wasn't, for whatever reason, I wasn't seeing the other left arm. And I thought, like, oh, that's kind of weird that they gave them 3 arms instead of, if they're going to make them have more limbs, I'm surprised they didn't just make it even. But then later you do see that they do, in fact, have 4 limbs. But for half a second there, I wasn't picking up on it. I don't know, something about the angle they were. It looked like he only had 3 arms. I thought that was I almost thought that was kind of cooler. Just because it was so unique and weird.
Cool story, bro.
Sure.
Yeah, like, everything's so creative. One of the scenes I enjoyed a lot, actually, was the tavern scene when he was in the little village.
Okay.
They were in the little village, and these guys came around. Those creatures, whatever they were called, I can't remember the name of the race, but those the ones that the Skeksis were turning into slaves. Sure. They reminded me a lot of the Builders from Fraggle Rock, and I know you didn't really watch it, but in Fraggle Rock, there was a underground race with the Fraggles, and they call them the Builders, and they would always build like these structures out of like these clear crystal like type of materials, and they hated the Fraggles because the Fraggles would come around and they tear their buildings apart and eat them.
Wasn't there like some kind of giants too in that show? Like some kind of more, like, biggish...
Well, the Fraggles were real small, so
Yeah.
they could go to, like, the human... There was a human and a dog in it who were both really big. But then there are also, like, 2 ogres or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was also a trash heap that was alive.
Hmm.
Very weird.
Okay.
I loved that show. And this theme song is really catchy.
So we talked about a slight Lord of the Rings vibe. Did you also get a Star Wars vibe with just the Force and, like, how that all works? I kind of...
Not the Force so much, but...
Well, just the way the crystal could be used for good, it could be used for evil.
Yeah.
I kind of... I don't know. I'm not saying they were, but it just somewhat kind of reminded me of that as well. I didn't know if...
Well, that village scene kind of reminded me of Star Wars a little bit. It almost reminded me of Ewok Village.
Which village?
The one where they were at. The village with the little people.
It reminded me of the Ewoks?
A little bit.
Okay.
The Ewok Village, because it's just in the middle of the forest, and they're all singing and dancing and having fun.
Yeah, I guess. Only they didn't...
It wasn't as stupid as the Ewoks.
They didn't get as bloodthirsty and violent and revengeful
Right.
as the Ewoks were.
They weren't vicious little bears.
Yes. So, not to bring up the Labyrinth again, but, you know, there's similarities to a degree, and that's mostly probably just with the Henson creatures. You know, certain things have a certain look, but, like, obviously where Labyrinth is a little more silly, and, you know, with musical numbers and all that stuff.
Labyrinth is kind of like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, that's true. But this, I like that it had this darker, more gritty, like, overtones to it, and I think that makes it age better, at least for me. And I know there's a lot of people that love the Labyrinth, and that's like a classic. And in fact, I almost think there's probably more people that are about the Labyrinth than this one. But I actually, it's to me, it's kind of a shame for me that I didn't see this when I was a kid. I could see this easily being one of my, you know, favorite fantasy movies, like the way I hold, you know, The Neverending Story in a high nostalgic kind of regard. You know, I can see its faults now, but I can still appreciate it. And I think if I would have saw this as a kid, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that really spurs the imagination. I kind of agree with Jim Henson, and I've said it before on the podcast. You know, it's okay to have scary stuff for kids.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
to have some darker.
Well,
themes.
look at how many bedtime stories that I remember. Oh man, what was it? Was it Goldilocks or something? One of these old kids' books. It has since been modified where it's more of a happy ending, but like I think like the little girl gets
they changed
eaten.
all the original fairy tales.
She gets eaten in the end. It's supposed to be a cautionary tale about like listening to your parents and not being greedy, and you know, I maybe it was Hansel and Gretel or something. One of them, like, you know, the kids actually die, and that's what it was written for. So I can see what he's getting at. Like,
I wonder if that's where the word grim actually comes from.
Kind of jumping around here. When he first gets to Aughra and she dumps out all these crystals, there's like 9 of them maybe. How does he narrow it down to those 3?
I don't know. I know he played the flute though, or whatever he had.
That was to get it to light up.
Yeah.
But and I didn't understand, like, why was that? Why did it light up with music? What was there? Just because? Was that just to, you know, move the story along? Like, because otherwise he'd be sitting there forever.
Yeah, and I'm sure they could have explained a lot of stuff to him. He was living with those mystics for a long time, who obviously knew a lot about the crystal.
Yeah, it's funny. I think if it was me, I would have just taken them all and just figured it out once I got there. But I guess once you see how that end result, you know, he wouldn't have time to actually do that. But that's just how my brain works. Just figure it out later. But why did she have it if she wasn't doing anything with it?
Maybe she didn't know what to do with it. I don't know.
But didn't she tell him? Or was that the main mystic that told him?
Or maybe she's too old and big to get by all the Skeksis. Maybe she was afraid.
Is she the same creature in the Labyrinth who, when Jennifer Connelly is in like this, basically this trash heap, and she's trying to make her forget about her brother, and she's like, oh, here's your dolly and stuff like that, you know, and she keeps like finding things that she's trying, and like Jennifer Connelly kind of, at that point, she's kind of forgotten about the Labyrinth in that world, or in her brother, and she's seeing things or something like that are kind of jogging her memory, and there's this woman monster thing that's trying to get her to go back to your room, go play with your dolls, go make believe. It looks, from best I can remember, it almost looks identical to Aughra. Alright, we'll look it up later. Remind me.
Might be. I don't know. I'm having trouble remembering.
It just almost seems like an Easter egg, basically, like to have a character.
I'm sure there were probably some references in it. I would consider that one closer to being like a fairy tale, as opposed to just fantasy.
Okay. You and all your labels.
I got something stuck in my tooth.
We talked about how ambitious it was with all these crazy creatures and sword fighting and jumping around. And one of the things I thought was really neat, for lack of a better word, because the way they were used, they were like a horse, but they had
those are my favorite creatures legs. In the whole movie. Yeah.
And I know how they did it. Like, I've seen stuff,
arm and leg sprints.
Yeah, like those
stilts.
It's still rather impressive how they did that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I know probably a lot of these things were people in suits.
Yeah, those are actors inside of there. They almost look like like a cross between a horse and a rabbit in a way.
Yeah, I mean, they look nothing like a horse. Just what
or
their
rabbit. But
when they're functioning.
They actually almost have a walrus face.
Yeah.
Today's podcast is brought to you by the cool, refreshing taste of Pepsi.
I love it.
This ad brought to you by Coke. So, yeah. That's actually my favorite creature in the whole movie, and that's one of the things I thought of a lot when I was watching Avatar. I'm like, those things are super cool. Like, why didn't they do anything more creative like that?
Yeah, because like we said, everything's alive. There's weird stuff everywhere. Like, there's this one part where they were just panning across the landscape, and like the grass is moving, and like even the plants are alive.
The wide shots of just the land even were crazy.
It was. Yeah, I mean, they could have just went out and found some little woodsy looking area and filmed, but they created everything, and like it almost reminds you of animation in that like.
Every place on this world felt alive, except for where the Skeksis were, but they were draining
right, which
them.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
That they, drained everything. I mean, they were even fighting over that little, like, it was probably the size of a cockroach, but it was essentially like a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
It was running across the table, and they were all trying to grab it. Like, they wanted to kill everything.
And there were all those creatures in their lab, too, that they had where they would drain their essences.
Oh, yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of crazy stuff in this movie. So, I wanted to get to something else.
Too bad.
I thought the music in the movie was really good. I enjoyed the score a lot.
Yeah.
The sets looked wonderful. Most of the puppets looked great, except for Jen. I thought he was the worst one, which is unfortunate because he's the one you look at the most.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the characters were pretty good. I liked Jen and Kira both. Like, they felt like real in a way, the way their characters worked. He wasn't like super brave, but he wasn't a chicken either.
Right. Yeah.
And he was still kind of naive a little bit, but he was doing the best he could.
Can she speak to everything? Is that like her power? She has the ability to speak to any
She was able
animal?
to communicate with animals somehow.
Okay. Yeah, but he wasn't, so it wasn't like something...
She also had wings.
Yeah, wings are like breast. I said it. Wings like breast. I like breast better myself, but...
Hi, Brittany. So, anyway.
I'll say it to her.
So, yeah, I was making that joke too. I was like, so if, like, what else? If girls have wings? What do the guys have? Wow. He didn't have anything. It seemed out of the ordinary.
Yeah. So when he is looking in this little tunnel, and it's essentially when the dog thing pops out. I actually jumped a little, like when he's peeking in it and like. I don't know, it's kind of like...
Bucket or whatever its name was.
But it was kind of, like, it was kind of funny because when it opened its mouth, you saw, like, a second set of teeth.
Yeah.
And at the back of the throat.
It kind of barked like a dog. It acted like a dog.
Yeah, it was basically a dog. I
mean... we were talking about the level of detail in this movie. One of the things I noticed that I thought that kind of impressed me is they started to drain Kira's essence a little bit. Mm-hmm. And from that point forward, she looked pretty haggard. She changed.
Yeah. I wrote that down, that there's attention to detail that... She actually gets some of her life sucked out of her, and they actually have her be pale looking, look a little sickly, and she doesn't seem to move as healthy as she once was.
She's weaker. I thought that was more frail.
Great that they
her hair is white instead of whatever it was before.
Yeah, that was great detail. I didn't notice and appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Like most places,
she had like the dark circles under her eyes.
Yeah, most movies probably wouldn't even think of that part.
Yeah.
There's this. Have you ever seen The Mist?
Yeah.
There's this one, I think it's when he meets her, there's this tree or this vine in the background. It has, like, spikes on it. Like, almost looks like a tentacle. I half expected it to move and do something, but they never did. But it reminds me of the spike, or the tentacle with the spikes that comes under the loading dock area of the grocery store. And it almost makes me wonder, because I've heard of certain movies that will actually look at old movies. And
so you're saying in the Dark Crystal you saw something in the background?
Yeah, there was like a tree or something. I'm assuming it's a tree or a vine or something. It had like little spikes on it. Mm-hmm. And I was waiting for it to move. I was thinking like they were going to have to fight it off or something, or she was going to say like, watch out, something, don't get too close to it or whatever. But they didn't. But anyway, it reminds me of that thing in the mist where the tentacle comes under and then it has all the spikes and it's grabbing people and stuff. It just makes me wonder if they looked at other...
Well, they had the like catfish monster thing, whatever it was, that helped him out. Remember he was like sinking in the swamp, so she made...
Oh, yeah.
The swamp also kind of reminded me of Dagobah a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. That, just that alone now, this probably came out first, I want to say, but Enemy Mine, there was a creature like that. There was like a quicksand kind of thing, and he was sinking in it, and then there's like this monster in the sand. The only difference is that one was actually trying to kill him and eat him, whereas this helped him out. But anyway,
yeah,
I don't know if they ripped off that or took it,
While you were talking, Beetlejuice flashed in my head, and then Dune, and then the thing from Return of the Jedi. Outside of Jabba's
the
floating
Sarlacc pit or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
Frank Oz was in it.
Yeah. The utensils were like, instead of just a knife or a fork, they had like these little finger utensils.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Like when they're eating, they're having their big buffet, the sexies. That's right. They have these little utensils that are on each finger. So like each finger they can stab like whatever they're eating, and it just thought it was kind of funny.
Just eat it with their hands, yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of funny though that they just thought of little things like that. Like, hey, let's make some interesting way how they do stuff, And then Aughra, I think I got it right. She's brought to them while they're eating. It was right there, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was funny because she stole something right in front of them. Like she's talking to them. They want her to basically lure Jen or whatever, and there's something on their table, and she just like takes it and like pockets it. And I just thought that was kind of funny, like just to be that bold, just to steal something.
She was a fun character. Yeah. All the characters are pretty good in this. Like I liked even like the two main Skeksis, the one that became the general or whatever it was.
The one that was kind of rogue, or basically he was like banished, so to speak.
Well, that one, his name was I had his name written down. Starts with a C. Chamberlain.
Okay, see, I don't remember catching these names as much.
Yeah, his name was Chamberlain. I can't remember the names of any of the other ones. But, yeah, I got the impression that he was jealous of the one that became in charge.
Yeah.
They had that little thing, that contest. They would see who could make the bigger mark in the rock.
Yeah, which is funny because at first I thought they were going to fight each other. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, then they just,
That's a way of making it scary without going too far for the kids. Yeah. But I got the sense he was jealous, and he thought that, well, maybe if I bring back the last Gelfling, then the other ones will promote me. I can become the leader. And that was his plan the whole time.
See, yeah, that very well could be. But here's a question I have for you. Didn't they say at one point that the crystal itself was what gave the Skeksis... I cannot say that word. The Skeksis their essence or their life? Isn't that the thing that kept them alive? Kind
of. They were using it to drain the essence from other things to keep themselves alive.
That explains everything right there. That's what I needed to know, and for some reason that either went right over my head or I missed it somehow.
Okay. Yeah, apparently the crystal could do a lot of things, and that's one of the things they were using it for.
It's an ambiguous thing like the Force.
Okay.
Suddenly, okay.
Yeah, when the crystal cracked, it separated them.
Right, yeah, because I wrote that...
The light and the dark force.
Right, because like when they showed the one Skeksy die while the Aughra or whatever were walking in the field, and the one, it just like vanishes.
Yeah.
The others look back at it, and I was like, at the time I was like, why is this happening? Because I didn't know, but then when they got to the end,
I did like that, neither one of them looked completely pure, but then once they reformed, they were like these beings of light almost, and everything lit up and became white.
Yeah, that was the weird thing. When they merged back, I actually didn't like that look as much. It's not that I thought it was a bad look, it just looked very out of place in this movie, where...
It looked alien.
Exactly. They looked like aliens as we think of them, whereas everything in this movie, even though technically they're alien to Earth or like somewhere else, they have a very organic, real world inspired look to them. And when they merged back and became like, essentially they were like the typical like smooth round head, the eyes and all that stuff, it looked like something out of Dune to me.
Doom, the video game?
Did I say Doom?
No.
Oh. I didn't know if I misspoke.
I was making a horrible joke.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, that was the one thing once they revealed what they were, like, okay, like, you know, the Skeksis have the beak, where the Aughra or whatever have, like, a very long nose, like, snout kind of thing. So I kind of see, like, at least the similarities, like, to a degree.
So you wanted them to look more like those?
Well, no, I'm not saying they had to look, but it just, the fact that they didn't really look like either of them combined, like, some kind of combo.
I was fine with it.
It was, I'm not mad about it, just saying it seemed out of place to me.
Okay.
But I'm not mad about it, if that sounds right. I thought it was funny that the dog thing rolled around like Sonic. He essentially, like, turned into a little ball.
He reminded me of a critter.
That's a good one, yeah. Critter, that makes sense, yeah. I just thought it was funny that how he rolled around. Because they didn't show him do that, I don't think, until they got to the...
I saw him do it a few times.
Did they? Like, I thought he didn't do it to the...
He did a lot when they got to the palace.
Okay, that's... Okay.
So a little bit of trivia that I saw, but I didn't write down, was actually it being the Dark Crystal was a mistake. It was supposed to be the Dark Chrysalis, but the guy that did all the concept art for the movie thought that Jim Henson said crystal. So he started making all this crystal stuff.
So it's supposed to be like a metamorphosis inside?
Well, it's supposed to be like, the idea is that the Skeksis have everything in, like, this big cocoon of darkness almost. Like, they're controlling everything, and it was more of a metaphor. But then the guy that did all this crystal stuff, he's like, well, we'll go with it. I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, because it gave him something he had to literally take and do something with.
So I kind of get annoyed when they kind of expand things unnecessarily. Like I said, for example, Westworld. I only really wanted the first season. I didn't really need any more. I don't know how that second season is. I think I heard that it was maybe not as good. But they can't ever leave anything alone. But, like, this world leaves me feeling like I wish I could see more. Not only is everything on this planet awesome and cool and interesting, just imagine what the rest of this solar system is like. Because there are, like, 37 planets there. They have 3 suns. Who knows what else is around them.
So I thought it was funny. Is it Kira or something like that?
Kira.
I think it's funny she didn't free Aughra. Did you notice that? Like, she was in that room. I think there was all those, like, caged animals, and like she was
running out of time, and I think Aughra probably told her just go, because
did she? Okay.
They only had until the suns aligned, and then
yeah. When did that come about? Like, did they know that?
It was right in the beginning.
Did they? Okay, I don't remember that part.
Well, they said it at the beginning. The narrator did.
Oh, okay.
I love that narrator voice. I actually thought that was von Sydow, Max von Sydow.
Oh, okay, yeah,
but it wasn't.
The Aughra, when they're singing. Do you remember that part where they're like kind of like singing something and it
at the beginning when the one died?
Yeah. I was like, it reminded me of something, and I was like, what is this? It was Ludo from the Labyrinth. He, like, makes this call, and rocks, remember, like, come out of the swamp, or he causes boulders to fall.
I kind of remember that.
But, like, it's the same, like, you know, this big thing, and, like, I mean, they don't have anything happen when they do it. It's just a thing they do.
It's like a chant that's resonating.
Yes, exactly. Maybe singing is not the proper word. I couldn't think of anything better. Okay. You want some final thoughts?
Sure, some final thoughts. Go ahead. You go first.
Oh, okay. I wrote that I thought it was a nice touch that they made Kira look sick after having her essence drained. That was nice that they... an attention to detail that I thought was amazing. Landscapes, backgrounds were amazing. There was at least 3 or 4 shots I specifically remember pausing just to really soak it in. I thought that was really great, just how well all that looked. Creatures were amazing. You know, I already made comparison to the Neverending Story, but even that movie didn't have nearly amount. Like, the one other time they show stuff is in the council, where they're trying to find someone that will, you know, go against the nothing, and there's things there, but you don't get super good looks at all of them. Like, a lot of them are a distant shot where, like, you see everything here, and, like, everything's alive, and it's pretty amazing. That's a lot of work, especially, like, for puppets and stuff. You know, you're making everything. It's like, even animation, I'm not trying to down animation, but, like, it's so much easier to draw something.
Yeah, you can just draw it and color it. This you have
exactly.
to
it's just
have to build
figure
it,
out the logistics of how this thing is going to move. Is it better to do it as an animatronic? Is it better to do it as a guy in a costume, or a robot, a puppet? Like,
or a lot of them were a mix of all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, figuring out how to make that come to life. The fact that they didn't skimp on...
And the special effects, like, they showed the one guy that was in charge when he was drinking that essence and he got younger. It wasn't a bunch of cutscenes. Like, he started to morph right in front of our eyes. Like, he became, obviously, like, less old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, they had, maybe, like, bladders in them that they would fill with air to, like, puff him up a little. Make him more smooth and bigger.
Right.
And then once he started to lose it again, he became all frail. Like, the bladders were losing their air. And just everything in the movie. Like, it's just a wonder to behold. And I know he always wanted to do something else with that world, but he never got the chance.
Right. And like I said, I already said this already. I'm kind of retreading things, but Labyrinth is, I'm thinking, probably the better known of the two. But I think this one's the better by far.
I'd agree with that second part. Yeah,
it's the better. Yeah. You think that you think this is better known?
I don't know.
I just because more people I met always talked about.
You might be right. I just don't know.
Dark Crystal. You know, the one thing is, it's probably just me overthinking it. I was just a little unclear of the Skeksis and the Aughra. They're the same people. They got separated because the crystal shattered, or was it one of them got? Was it one of them actually became like prideful and wanted all power all for himself? Wasn't that something they said? I think,
if I remember right, the way they explained it is something about it caused them to fall. It's and either that cracked the crystal, or when the crystal cracked finally, like through their carelessness. Yeah, I guess they said they became arrogant or something like that.
Yeah, I would just be interested to know, like, why were they so linked with the crystal? Like, what about them?
It seemed almost like they created the world, and then once they got put back together, essentially, they're like, all right, this world's yours. We're gonna take off.
You think they created that world?
They may have.
Okay. Yeah, I found myself a little interested to know, who are these people? Like, where do they come from? Are they from one of those other planets we saw in her model solar system? You know,
maybe.
I don't know, just little stuff like that. I found just where they came from almost as interesting as the actual world itself and everything else in it.
Problems? Do you have any problems with the movie?
No, not really. I mean, you know, some of the things maybe don't look incredible, but there's so much stuff that looks great. The few and far between things that maybe don't hold up as well, I can totally look past.
So what grade would you give it?
That's a hard one. Like I said, so I don't have the nostalgia for it, which it's just unfortunate because I didn't see it at a younger age. But I honestly feel like if I had, this one would be one of my fantasy movies to, you know, and I definitely think it's better than Labyrinth. I think it's better than Neverending Story. Just with the Neverending Story, you know, the only thing it has is it probably is a little easier to follow because there are humans. And I mean, that's just going to make it a little easier, but I didn't have such a hard time with it that I was, like, lost with it. It's something I think I probably should watch again just to maybe... Because there was a few things I had to ask you about, like, wait, when did they say this? Or how did this happen? Or why? So just some things I overlooked, but... I'm going to say a B+, I think.
Okay.
I was originally going to say a B, but I think I have to give them so much more credit, though, for everything they accomplished with that in 82. And just how well... in, you know, 2018, as I watched this really for the first time, that I was pausing things to soak it in, what I was seeing. I was rewinding things so I could just try to study these creatures and these, like... That's impressive to me.
It's funny, I'm looking over here on your shelf and you have Where's Waldo books, and it almost like... I used to do that with Where's Waldo, just I want to see every little thing.
Yeah.
For me, it's a movie I grew up with that I loved a lot when I was a kid. I've watched it every now and then again while I've been an adult. I still enjoy it. The level of detail is amazing. The level of work that they put into it is something you really have to appreciate. It's just amazing, and it's a world that leaves me wanting more. Like, I'd love to see more of this world, and I'm looking forward to that Netflix series.
Right. And when we talked about that, the Netflix series back then, like, I was thinking, man, you know, I've never seen this movie. Yeah. I need to see this, because, like, I knew enough, like, what they looked like. I knew what the Skeksis looked like, so, like, that wasn't like, what is this thing? I knew what certain things looked like, and I had seen, like I said, half of it, so I had my toe dipped in. I just needed to really see it, and now I'm interested to check that out and see what they do with it.
A lot of my fondest memories of, like, from our childhood, because we were born in the 80s, we grew up through most of the 80s, There was it seemed like a lot of stuff had some kind of fantasy background to it back then. Fantasy was huge.
Yeah.
And, it got popular because this has been around for a while, but it got pretty popular in the late 70s and then kind of died down in the 90s again. We were talking about that.
Yep.
Like, it seems like all their fantasy stuff ended up moving to television, like TV shows, cheap stuff, like Hercules with Kevin Sorbo.
I actually used to watch Hercules.
Yeah, well, it was on Netflix not too long ago, and I was trying to watch the whole thing. I don't know if it still is.
That show got weird, but that's another topic.
Well, yeah, that and Xena and all sorts of stuff.
I didn't watch Xena as much, but anyway.
Anyway, so, yeah, I love all that stuff. My issues with the movie would be, one, Jen didn't look as good as the other stuff, and he was the main one, so I'm not sure what happened there. And two,
but you think even the female, what was her name? Kira? You think she looked better than him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my other issue would be, it seemed like it had a little bit of pacing issues. Not that it was bad or anything, but it seems like it could have flown more.
Okay.
Or, like, the flow could have been a lot more smooth.
Okay.
I think maybe, like, if somebody's got some attention problems and they're the type of person that's always going to be looking down at their phone, they're not going to be able to watch the movie.
Okay.
Unless they're like super into art or fantasy or sci-fi or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if it's something they're into, they're going to be glued to the screen.
Yeah.
But if you're the type of person that you got to always be looking down at your phone or tablet or whatever you're doing or talking to somebody, you're not going to watch it.
Okay.
So I'll give it a B.
Okay.
It's kind of weird you gave it a higher score than me. I do like the movie a lot though. I really love just how creative it is, but I'll give it a B.
Okay.
Solid B.
B and B plus.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Do we want to give a stinger of what's happening next, or do we want to leave them in the dark?
Well, we're working on a few other things that you'll find out in a couple of months. Once the months start ending with Burr, things are going to get a lot more interesting.
Let's hope.
Stay tuned for another fantasy movie, according to me, but according to you, it's sci-fi. That's the best clue we can give them.
Okay, very well. Right. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Peace! See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to travel through time. I bid you adieu.
Don't stop now! You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
Where are you going? I've got to return some videotapes.
Bye, Felicia.
Testes. Testicles. Testes.
I prefer breasticles.
Me too.
Okay.
All right.
Is it picking me up eating my sausage stick?
It is picking you up, yes.
Alright. Real test. Here we go.
Oh. Okay.
Welcome to the Escape Podcast. Escape, your source for all the news and movie.
Yeah. So, there it is. Wash it down. We have time. I guess I'll join you. You good?
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Alright. Maybe I should grab my notes.
Do that.